If you've ever felt like manifesting your desires was harder than it should be, like no matter how hard you tried to visualize or set intentions, something kept you stuck. This might be the most important idea you encounter. There is a reason your efforts often feel like they're working against you. It's not because you lack discipline. It's not because you lack clarity. It's because most of what you've been taught about creating change relies on force, forcing your mind to think positively, forcing your body to stay motivated, forcing reality to bend to your timeline. But in the realm of quantum physics and consciousness, force is rarely the catalyst for transformation. Instead, there is a phenomenon that explains why so many people get exhausted, chasing results that never seem to materialize. It's called frequency interference. When your internal state is filled with effort, tension, and the anxiety of wanting something to happen, you introduce noise into your signal. From the perspective of the quantum field, your energy becomes inconsistent. One part of you is broadcasting desire, but another part is broadcasting fear that it won't arrive. And the field responds to the totality of that signal, not just your stated intention. In this moment, I want to introduce you to something I call the quantum frequency shift, a state change so fundamental, it reorganizes your entire relationship with reality. It's not about thinking harder, or working more, or performing elaborate rituals. It's about creating a coherent frequency inside your own field, one that resonates with what you're choosing to experience. And the paradox is this: the moment you stop forcing reality to comply with your will, the energy you've been scattering in frustration consolidates, your nervous system calms, your awareness expands. You move from a contracted signal to a harmonious one, and in that state, the field begins to reflect your intention more clearly. If this sounds abstract, consider the science behind it. Every thought you have produces an electromagnetic signature. Every emotional state generates measurable patterns in your heart and your brain. When you're stressed, your heart rhythm becomes erratic. Your breath constricts. Your brain waves fragment into disordered frequencies. This is called incoherence, and it creates what researchers describe as biological noise. You can think of it like trying to tune an old radio, trying to find a clear station, while static is blaring in the background. No matter how beautiful the music is, you can't hear it because the signal isn't clean. This is why many people spend years repeating affirmations, visualizing success, without experiencing meaningful change. They are layering positive thoughts over a body that remains in survival mode. They are projecting desire while embodying resistance. And so, no matter how many times they say, "I am abundant," the field receives the underlying vibration of lack. The quantum frequency shift isn't a method you do. It's a shift you allow by creating the conditions for coherence to arise naturally. In other words, it's about aligning your physiology and awareness in a way that your energy stabilizes into a singular, powerful signal. Today, you'll learn how to create this shift and why it doesn't require you to be perfect or to constantly monitor every thought. You'll see that your nervous system is capable of reorganizing itself when you simply provide it with the right inputs. Slower breathing, an intention rooted in curiosity rather than desperation, and a willingness to let go of urgency. Before we explore the science and the technique, I want you to consider something. Every outcome in your life has been shaped by the frequency you consistently broadcast, not the one you visit occasionally when you feel inspired, but the one you return to when no one is watching. That frequency isn't a moral judgment of your worth. It's simply the composite of your thoughts, emotions, and biological state. When you understand this, it becomes clear why no amount of forcing or striving can override a chronically incoherent signal. But the moment you experience coherence, when your breath, heart, and mind synchronize, something shifts. You feel it in your body, a softening, an openness, a quiet sense that you don't need to prove or chase anything. And ironically, it's often in this state of non-attachment that reality begins to respond in ways you once thought required effort. In the next part, we'll explore the scientific foundation for this shift. You'll discover how researchers measure coherence, why it's so essential to transforming your energy, and how this process aligns perfectly with what ancient traditions have always taught about surrender, presence, and trust. Stay with me, because once you understand this, you'll realize that the life you've been trying to force into existence is already available, waiting for you to tune to its frequency. Let's begin with the science. In the field of neurocardiology, researchers have discovered something remarkable. Your heart produces the most powerful electromagnetic field in your body, many times stronger than the field generated by your brain. This field extends several feet beyond your skin, and it's measurable with instruments like magnetocardiograms. Now here's where it gets interesting. When you feel frustration, anxiety, or any form of survival stress, your heart rhythm becomes jagged and erratic. This is called incoherence. It's not a failure. It's not a flaw. It's simply the signature of a nervous system in defense mode. But there's a problem. When your heart rhythm is disordered, your brain waves become chaotic as well. Your breath shortens. Your immune system enters high alert, and your perception narrows, constantly scanning for threats. This ancient survival mechanism once protected us from danger. But in modern life, it often becomes a chronic baseline, one that broadcasts a persistent signal of stress into the quantum field, whether you realize it or not. Now contrast that with coherence, when you slow your breathing and focus your awareness on feelings of appreciation or calm. Your heart rhythm becomes smooth, sinusoidal, wave-like. Scientists call this heart-brain coherence, and it's measurable. Stress hormones like cortisol decrease. Regenerative hormones like DHEA increase. Your brain waves synchronize with your heart rhythm. Your immune system strengthens. Your perception expands beyond fear-driven thinking. This is not a theory. It's data. From a quantum perspective, coherence creates a stable, powerful frequency, one that interacts with the field in ways incoherence cannot. Imagine tuning forks. When one tuning fork vibrates at a certain frequency, a nearby fork begins to resonate with it. This is called entrainment. Your coherent field works the same way. When you maintain coherence, you entrain your environment. You influence the probabilities within the field to match your signal. This is why, in elevated states, synchronicities appear more often. Solutions arrive seemingly out of nowhere, and life begins to feel like it's flowing, rather than resisting you. Ancient traditions described this state long ago. Yogic texts called it samadhi, deep presence and unity. Mystics called it surrender, the art of releasing control. Taoist philosophy named it Wu Wei, effortless action. Though the language differs, the essence is the same. When you release resistance and align your inner state, reality reorganizes itself in response. But let's be clear. Coherence doesn't mean you never feel fear or doubt. It means you don't live there. You learn to witness those fluctuations without collapsing your entire energy field into them. You return to your baseline of calm more easily because your nervous system has learned to recognize it as home. This is why the quantum frequency shift isn't about forcing yourself to feel good all the time. It's about cultivating the conditions: slower breath, relaxed awareness, authentic intention that allow coherence to arise and naturally. Once you experience this, you realize something profound. Effort is often a symptom of misalignment. The harder you push, the more you signal to the field that you are separate from what you want. The more you release and attune, the more naturally life begins to reflect your inner state. This is why so many people feel exhausted. On the path of personal development, they're trying to solve internal incoherence with more information, more techniques, more performance. But the quantum field doesn't respond to volume. It responds to clarity. So how do you create clarity? You learn to notice when you are in incoherence and gently return to coherence again and again. You let go of urgency. You remember the field is participatory. It mirrors back the frequency you emit. And you realize the shift you've been waiting for, doesn't require external proof before you trust it. In the next part, I'll guide you step by step through the quantum frequency shift technique. You'll see that it's deceptively simple, a combination of breath, focus, and a single question that dissolves resistance. If you practice with sincerity, you'll begin to feel the unmistakable difference in your own energy, sometimes within minutes. Stay present, because this is where theory becomes embodiment, and where you stop forcing reality and start tuning to it. Now that you understand the science and philosophy behind coherence, you're ready to experience the quantum frequency shift for yourself. This practice isn't complicated, but it requires something most people find surprisingly difficult: the willingness to stop striving. Because the moment you stop trying to force reality, you create the conditions for your field to reorganize itself. Before we walk through the steps, I want you to remember this is not about achieving perfection. You don't have to be free from all doubt. You don't have to maintain a constant state of bliss. All that's required is your willingness to approach the practice with curiosity instead of expectation. When you bring that quality of openness, the technique becomes a doorway, one you can return to as often as you like. Here is how you do it. Find a place where you can sit comfortably without interruption. You don't need a special environment. You don't need a ritual. Though if you enjoy lighting a candle or playing ambient music, feel free. What matters most is this: you feel safe to turn your attention inward. Begin by gently closing your eyes. Take a slow, deliberate inhale through your nose. Let your belly expand, as if you're filling a vessel with calm. Exhale softly through your mouth, letting your shoulders drop. Repeat this 2 or 3 more times, each breath becoming a little slower, a little softer. This is called physiological priming. When you slow your breath, you signal to your nervous system, "I am safe." This single act begins to shift your heart rhythm toward coherence. If you could see your electromagnetic field right now, you'd notice the jagged, stressed waveforms beginning to smooth. Next, bring your attention to your heart center. You can place a hand lightly over your chest if it helps you focus. Imagine that each inhale is drawing subtle, luminous energy into your heart. Each exhale spreads that energy through your body, creating a calm, radiant field around you. Now here is where the shift happens. Gently introduce the feeling of appreciation. It doesn't have to be big or dramatic. It can be as simple as gratitude for the breath you're taking, the quiet space you've created, or the stillness you feel right now. The key is authenticity. Even a small, genuine feeling has a powerful impact on your frequency. Hold this focus for a minute or two. Let the feeling build naturally without forcing it. If your mind wanders, just notice it with kindness and return to your breath, to your heart, to the warmth. You may begin to feel a subtle change, a quiet expansion, a softening in the chest, or simply a peaceful stillness. This is the beginning of coherence. Once you feel somewhat stable, you can introduce a question that dissolves resistance and helps your field align with possibility. Ask yourself, gently, inwardly, what would it feel like if this was already resolved? Don't look for an answer in words. Let your body respond. Maybe there's a soft exhale, a gentle release in your jaw, or just a sense of openness. This response is your nervous system exiting the stress loop. Why is this question so powerful? Because it bypasses the logical mind. It bypasses the part of you that wants to control, plan, predict. And it brings you into the domain of frequency, the domain the quantum field actually understands. Because the field doesn't respond to your plans. It responds to the vibration you hold. Think of this like tuning an instrument. You're not yanking the strings into harmony. You're gently adjusting tension until resonance occurs. Sometimes it arrives quickly. Other times, it builds slowly. Either way, your only task is to stay curious and allow the process. You can practice this technique anytime. Before starting your day, to set your frequency. When you notice stress creeping in, before a big decision, so you act from alignment, not fear. Many people expect fireworks the first time. Sometimes that happens. A wave of emotion, a surge of insight. But more often, the change is subtle. You feel less contracted, more spacious, strangely at peace, even if nothing has changed on the outside. This is coherence. This is what alignment feels like. And from this place, you become far more effective. Not because you're working harder, but because your energy is no longer divided. Your intention is clear. Your nervous system is calm. Your field is stable. Let me share a real-world example. A client of mine, a creative professional, had spent months chasing a new opportunity. She made plans. She visualized success. She pushed herself to stay optimistic. But beneath all that effort was fear. Fear it wouldn't happen. Fear of what it meant about her if it didn't. She was broadcasting two frequencies simultaneously, desire and doubt. And the result was stagnation. When she began practicing the quantum frequency shift, something changed. She stopped rehearsing outcomes. She stopped trying to manipulate timing, and instead, she started embodying a quiet sense of trust. Within days, things began to move again. Opportunities resurfaced. Unexpected collaborations arrived. Even a project she'd nearly given up on came back into focus. The practice didn't magically manifest things overnight, but her coherent signal made her more receptive, more relaxed, more able to notice doors that had already been open all along. And this is what you're capable of too. You don't have to force your reality into shape. You can attune to the frequency that naturally attracts what aligns. In the next phase of this experience, we'll explore what happens when you begin living this way, consistently, how your external life reorganizes itself around your new coherence, and the subtle signs that your frequency is stabilizing. Stay with me. You are closer to this shift than you think. When you begin practicing the quantum frequency shift consistently, you'll notice something unexpected. Life doesn't necessarily become easier. Challenges still come, but your experience of life changes completely. The same situations feel lighter, clearer, more workable. This is one of the first signs your frequency is stabilizing. You realize your sense of peace no longer depends on outcomes. You stop waiting for external proof to confirm that you're doing it right. Instead, you feel a quiet certainty inside. Alignment becomes its own proof. Urgency dissolves. The background noise of, "I have to figure this out right now," begins to quiet. You respond instead of react. Decisions arise from clarity, not panic. And even if your mind slips into old patterns, you return to coherence more easily. This doesn't mean you don't care anymore. It means you've stopped believing you need to control everything to be okay. And paradoxically, as you stop forcing, you often see more movement in your outer world. Projects that felt stuck begin to open. Tense conversations soften. Resources and connections show up. With less friction. This isn't magic, it's resonance. The clearer your signal, the more easily reality can organize itself around it. In quantum term, your field collapses probabilities into form, but the quality of what emerges is shaped by the coherence and consistency of your vibration. Let's look at how this shows up. First, synchronicity increases. You think of someone, and they call you. You feel drawn to a place, and it holds the next clue. These moments aren't coincidences. They're reflections that your field is interacting fluidly with the web of life. Second, relationships recalibrate. People who resonated with your old patterns may gently drift away. New connections arrive, often feeling deeply aligned, even if they're brand new. You attract experiences that match your frequency, not your past. Third, your body changes. Sleep deepens. Energy stabilizes. The baseline tension in your nervous system softens. You breathe more easily or without trying. You begin to trust your body again. Fourth, you feel less reactive. Life still happens, but it doesn't feel like a personal threat anymore. You notice, observe, and choose how to respond. That is coherence becoming your default. Fifth, and perhaps most profound, a quiet sense of trust begins to bloom. You stop trying to prove your worth, even to yourself. You act with purpose, but without desperation. And this trust, it's magnetic. When these changes start happening, it's natural to wonder, is this real? The answer is simple. If your physiology, perception, and choices are shifting, you're not imagining change. You're embodying it. This is why the quantum frequency shift isn't a quick fix. It's not a trick. It's a practice, a new way of relating to yourself and to the field around you. Every time you return to it, you deepen your signal, you stabilize your coherence, and you become a clearer instrument for the life you're ready to live. It's normal to oscillate. You'll have days when old patterns resurface. You'll catch yourself reacting or doubting. This doesn't mean you failed. It means you're integrating. Every time you notice and choose to return to coherence, you reinforce your new baseline. Think of it like building a muscle. Each repetition increases your capacity to stay aligned, even when life moves fast. So before we move into the final part of this experience, take a moment, acknowledge your process, because the act of naming your shift, of claiming it consciously, amplifies the signal you're broadcasting. If you're feeling even a subtle resonance right now, if something in you feels like it's reorganizing, you can simply affirm, I am shifting. These three words aren't just a statement, they're a declaration to your nervous system, to your subconscious, and to the quantum field. Now, let's talk about the most common mistakes people make when they begin this practice, not to shame them, but to help you stay rooted when the mind wants to take over. First, trying to force an emotion you don't genuinely feel. You don't need to fake bliss or euphoria. If you're feeling tired, anxious, or doubtful, start there. Breathe into the truth of the moment. Even a small, real emotion like relief holds more coherence than a big fake one. Second, using the practice as a strategy to get something. It's natural to hope that life improves, and over time, it will. But if your main goal is to make something happen, you're still operating from force. The quantum frequency shift works best when coherence becomes the reward, when calm, clarity, connection are enough. Third, becoming hyper-vigilant about every thought. Once you realize your energy shapes reality, it's tempting to obsess, to panic over every negative thought. But this doesn't help. The field responds to your consistent frequency, not your every fluctuation. Witness your thoughts. Don't become them. Fourth, expecting dramatic change instantly. Some shifts feel immediate, but most happen subtly, incrementally. If you're only looking for big external results, you'll miss the quiet signs that your vibration is rising. Deeper sleep, gentler breath, less reactivity. These are real changes, and they're laying the foundation for more to come. Fifth, abandoning the practice when you feel off. Ironically, the moments you feel most disconnected are when coherence can help you the most. But many people think, if I don't feel calm, it's not working. So they stop. That's when you return to the breath, return to the body, and remember your worth was never dependent on how peaceful you felt. Over time, you build the capacity to stay coherent, even in chaos. This is mastery, not perfection, but a steady willingness to return to presence over and over. So maybe it's time to redefine success, not by whether you manifested something today, but by whether you remembered. Did you come back to your center? Did you soften your grip, even for a moment? Did you choose coherence when the world told you to panic? These are the metrics that matter. And when coherence becomes your priority, external shifts become inevitable, not because you demanded them, but because you stopped scattering your signal. Now let's bring everything together. A short practice, right here, right now, to help you feel this shift in real time. You don't need to prepare. You don't need to be perfect. Just sit, breathe, and allow. Find a quiet place. Let your hands rest naturally, on your lap or over your heart. Close your eyes or soften your gaze. Take a slow inhale through your nose. Feel your belly expand. Pause and exhale through your mouth. Do it again and again. Each breath a little slower. Each exhale a little softer. Now bring your attention to the space in the center of your chest. Imagine that space as soft, luminous, quiet. It has always been there, even beneath the noise. Now gently invite a feeling of appreciation. It doesn't need to be big. It doesn't need to be perfect. Just real. The breath in your lungs, the steadiness of the chair beneath you, the courage to be here. Let that feeling expand, naturally, without forcing. Notice how your body responds. Maybe your shoulders drop. Maybe your jaw softens. Maybe there's a subtle warmth. Stay with that. And now ask the question, not from your head, but from your heart. What would it feel like if I stopped forcing? Let the body answer. Maybe it's a soft exhale. Maybe it's a gentle release. Maybe it's just a sense of stillness. That is coherence. That is the frequency beneath all striving. If your mind drifts, notice it and return, not to effort, but to presence. You're not trying to make anything happen. You're remembering. You are remembering what it feels like to be in resonance. When you're ready, take one more slow inhale. Feel the stability of this moment. And as you exhale, open your eyes gently, bringing this coherence with you. This is where transformation begins. Not in grand gestures, but in moments just like this. When you choose to return to alignment without demanding proof, you can return to this practice anytime. Before a conversation, before your day begins, whenever you feel urgency rise, breathe, pause, remember. Coherence is always available. And if this resonates, if something in you feels a little clearer, a little calmer, a little more willing to trust, stay connected. This isn't about chasing the next idea. This is about living from this place of coherence, together. A space where science and spirit meet, where truth and softness are welcome, and where your evolution happens one breath at a time. Thank you for being here. Thank you for choosing trust over force. Stay in coherence. Keep returning. And always remember, the field doesn't respond to what you try to prove. It responds to who you are.